Good afternoon. Today, Angel and me will be presenting the pathology of patent foramen ovale. I will start with the introduction. The foramen ovale is a natural aperture of the upper parts of the heart, especially the left and the right atrium between them. When this is not closed, when the child is already born, it is called patent foramen ovale, and it is one of the most common pathologies around the population in general. Now I will talk about the epidemiology around the world and in Mexico, and also the diagnosis that is used around the world. It is known that around 50% of the babies that are born around the world, and in Mexico include, present this malformation around the atriums, and almost 25% of the population keeps this malformation, and almost none of them, anyone knows it, because it's a pathology that doesn't present any type of symptoms or signs. So almost a quarter of the population of the Mexican population present this pathology. And now the diagnosis. The most reliable element that we use nowadays is the echocardiogram, because it's the most, you can see almost all the heart through it. You put the echocardiogram through the heart of the baby. Now I will talk about the definition. So the patent foramen ovale is given thanks to a bad absorption of the septum primum, while the formation of the foramen secundum. Angel will talk about this a little bit later. So it's also known that the patent foramen ovale is known as the permeable window, that is almost that, literally, on the upper parts of the heart, as I said before. So it's a vestige malformation during the developing of the heart between the upper parts of the heart, called the atriums. And this malformation, sometimes it is closed, but most of the times it doesn't close, so this is where the pathology takes place.
So let's talk about the heart development and how does the patent foramen ovale appears, right? So we touched some basic principles about human embryology. Right after you form a zygote, which is a cellular complex right after the fusion of egg cell and a spermatozoon, the zygote will go under mitosis, forming lots of cells, and these cells will be displaced over through layers. This process is called as gastrulation. The importance of the gastrulation is that you will determine what cells are producing certain tissues. For example, there are certain cells that are displayed over a layer called the mesoderm, which will form the heart. From that layer, you will form what are primitive blood vessels, that you will form the endocardial tubes. Then you will form a primitive heart tube, and from that primitive heart tube, you will form the basic structure of your heart. So that after several changes of rotation and position, you will have to partition that primitive heart into 4 chambers, which are the upper left and right atriums, and the bottom section, which are the left and right ventricles. So now let's talk about the way the heart divides, right? So we know that the heart will finally divide into four chambers, right? But first of all, you have to divide the heart into two big sections, which are the right heart and the left heart. And this is mainly produced by a situation made out of by three elements, which are the interventricular septum, the endocardial cushion, and a septum primum. And what will happen is that these structures will be fused in the middle section of the heart, forming a wall, but the upper section will separate itself from the upper portion of the heart, leading to the formation of the foramen ovale. Now, let's remember that the foramen ovale is important due to you going under the development, so you're not capable of obtaining nutrients for yourself or to breathe, and therefore you need the placenta. The placenta is the structure that connects the cardiovascular system of your mother with yours, so the blood from your mother through the placenta will go right into your right atrium, and the blood will be moving from your right atrium, if you are having the foramen ovale, which is a normal thing, to the right to left atrium, and then that blood will reach out to your brain so that you can fully develop into a healthy human being, right? And the blood that you don't need, that you have already obtained, will then be expelled by the same way. The foramen ovale, by the time you're born, should close. Why? Because doctors are stimulating you to breathe so that you can have an sustainable cardiovascular system, which depends on the respiratory system, so that you can make a whole cycle in which you can move your blood, which is rich in oxygen and nutrients, right? So sometimes there are certain elements that can not close that foramen ovale, and that's known as the patent foramen ovale. For example, patent foramen ovale is made mainly because of genetic alterations due to the consumption of tobacco, alcohol, or certain medications, or even some cases of trauma. For example, the genetic alterations could lead to sick cardiogenic tissue that would produce the effects of a patent foramen ovale. That will lead up to a bad resorption of the septum primum, excessive reabsorption process of the septum primum, or simply you will have a bigger foramen ovale, or you will even have structural deficiencies of the endocardial cushions. In a big scale, you will have a foramen ovale that didn't close up. Now let's talk about the main treatments for people who have patent foramen ovales, right? So the main ways to treat this condition are by surgical procedures, which are super invasive, or you can use percutaneous transcatheter closures, which are recommended now by interventionist cardiologists, and usually these kind of therapies are accompanied by a medical therapy. For example, people tend to use warfarin and aspirins, which are medicines that can help the blood flow and prevent the formation of strokes or clots in the cerebral arteries. So if we talk about research in cardiovascular medicine, doctors have just synthesized a new product that can be applied through the percutaneous transcatheter closure, in which is called Emplacer PFO occluder. It's like a little metallic structure that lets the cardiac tissue to grow beneath its structure. So this structure can adapt to the integrity of the heart without damaging the cardiac structure of the patient, covering the foramen ovale. So let's talk about some curious facts about patients who have patent foramen ovale. More than 20% of all humans have these conditions, and the most common problem associated with these pathology are strokes and temporary neurological events. Even though most of the patent foramen ovales found in patients are discovered in healthy people just by incidental findings. I mean, unless a patient develops symptoms related to this condition or even other heart diseases, there's no need to seek treatments because they don't even know they have these conditions. For example, divers, most of the problems divers can develop are strokes or even neurological events, because, for example, they can suffer something called decompression illness. For example, when scuba divers go and explore the sea, they are adapting to the sea level pressure. And what happens is that in their bloodstream, they start making bubbles of air. And after that, these bubbles can travel up to their bloodstream, following their bloodstream up to their heart, and that bubble can travel from the right side of the heart to the left side of the heart, and it can travel to the brain arteries, and it could make a clot, making stroke. So that would be everything for our presentation. Me, Angel Roberto Morales, and my partner Carlos Alcalá would like to thank you for your attention.